So he actually had a number of patents, and then later on, he started his own practice doing construction claims and litigation work. So he would be an expert witness for either side. He would prepare, go through all the construction documents, prepare the report, and then go and testify in court. And so I was his assistant, his number one and only assistant for many years. And so I got an understanding of what you all go through for those of you that build and construct, right, when you have claims and litigation. He also gave a lot of seminars, and I would help prepare his seminar books and then also handle all his travel. So thank you, Dad, for being here. Also, my good friends, how I met Stephanie and the AlphaX team is through my good friends, Hanson, Chu, and Daisy. He served on the city council for many years, served in the state assembly, and now is running for his old seat, right, on the city council again. And so he is very, very popular. For those of you who don't know them, they are the hardest working team. And I always say in politics, it's really helpful if you have a partner that supports you versus fights you, right? Because this business is all about people. We are out a lot, and usually our spouses take second fiddle because we are public servants. And these two are amazing. And I see them in Sacramento, and they'll be holding hands, they're always together. I mean, that is so sweet. And to all the ladies, I guess, I understand there's this company is run by all ladies, right? How many of you saw Barbie, the movie? Right? Yeah. There's a lot of like nuances if you see Barbie, and whenever we get together, we talk about what it's like to be women, especially minority women in the state of California. Even though we are a great diverse state, there are still challenges for all of us here in this room. So I'm very honored to be here. As you saw from the slides, I started out as a real estate tax accountant working for one of the big 8 accounting firms, Ernst & Whinney, way back when. We moved to San Francisco almost 40 years ago. And I can tell you, being on the board of supervisors, ADUs was just part of the San Francisco experience, right? Family members, they want to live with each other, save some money until they can buy their house. But back then, it was illegal. And so if someone reported you to the building department, they would come in and tear down your ADU, your extra room. And so now, finally, in 2023, 2024, it is going to be much easier, and it is going to be permanently allowed that you can build an ADU legally. So I will talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But then after the Board of Supervisors in San Francisco, back then in 2002, I ran for the Sunset District. There are 11 members on the Board of Supervisors. We are the only city and county. And 20 years ago, I was the only Asian serving on the board and only the second woman. A lot has changed. Then I got elected to the state assembly in 2006 under Arnold Schwarzenegger when he was the governor, and Jerry Brown during the Great Recession. And so that was like the second time that I've gone through deficits. First time was the .com on the Board of Supervisors, then the Great Recession. So I'm kind of comfortable when we don't have money and everybody's panicking, but I don't like it. And so I always have to be very proactive to think about, what we can do to get out of that situation. So that was 2006 and 2012. I rose to the level of Speaker Pro Tem, which is the number 2 in the assembly. And then I got turned out, and I didn't have a seat to run for. In politics, it's like musical chairs. You hope when the music stops, you have a chair, right? And I didn't have a chair in 2012. And my dad and my mom, we were all living together. My dad says, "This is a sign. You should go back and be an accountant." And I said, "Dad, thank you, but no, I'm going to run for the State Board of Equalization. That is a tax board. How many of you have paid taxes? You have a store, you have a restaurant. right? And so I was your friendly tax collector. I really tried to make things, easier. And I also would hear tax appeals. And so many of our residents, they want to do the right thing, but they get a tax bill, they didn't pay it, interest and penalties. And so we would hear a lot of those cases. So that was actually very interesting because I was able to use a lot of my background. Then when my good friend John Chung ran for governor, I ran for state treasurer, and now I say my life has come full circle for you young people. I know your parents want you to probably be a lawyer, engineer, accountant, or a doctor. I'm an accountant, my brother's an engineer, my sister's a doctor. We just needed one more kid, I'm sure that would be a lawyer. But then I veered off and started doing politics, and my parents were not happy with me, right? Because you don't need even a GED to run for election. Right? But that is my calling, serving people. And so now as state treasurer, my dad is finally proud of me, and he does not bug me to go back and do people's taxes. So I have won 4 different elections over the last 20 years. I've been on the ballot 20 times. I haven't lost yet. And that's because I don't want my dad to say, I told you so. And number 2, I really don't want to be in an office doing taxes every 15th of the month. So thank you all for electing me over and over again. I love what I do. And this job really suits me because it is about money and finances and economics and budgeting and housing, right? So I am your banker. I take in all the money. Last year was about $3.7 trillion. I issue all the bonds for the state of California, and I manage a short-term portfolio of about $200 billion. So that is my constitutional functions. But then I also oversee programs that to issue the bonds and the tax credits for affordable housing. I fund all the children's hospitals and clinics and emergency beds, public transportation, charter schools, green energy, advanced manufacturing. I have 4 savings programs, and I also sit on CalPERS, CalSTRS, California Earthquake Authority, iBank, etc. So I know where the money is. After all these years, I kind of know how to get things done, who to call, and how to get the money out. So I know a lot of you probably have questions about infrastructure, Department of Energy, who's running, the new hydrogen hub. Please take my card after. If I don't answer your questions, please feel free to call me. So today, I think Stephanie and Lisa and Jane wanted me to talk about housing. I have other things on my 4-pager that is a handout out there, and that's just like a cheat sheet in case, I don't know sometimes who's going to be in the audience, so I tried to put more on there, and hopefully we can answer your questions. But when it comes to housing, I guess what we can do is we can start with the ADUs, since that was mentioned, and I just want to talk a little bit about the last 2 bills that the governor signed that will take effect January 1st of 2024. So first is the AB 976, which essentially extends permanently the ability, it's not on your sheet, sorry. I just talked about ADUs a little bit, but Jane said, please talk about these specific ADU bills, and so I'm going to talk about that. So anyway, AB 976 essentially allows homeowners, property owners to build ADUs permanently, right? Before, it was supposed to be phased out in 2025, and the governor signed it, so that's good news, because ADUs are helping with the housing crisis. How many of you have built an ADU? Or thinking about building an ADU? Okay, great. So starting in perhaps the end of this year, the governor put more money into the ADU program, and we are going to be giving out $40,000 grants. Again, this is free money for ADUs. It was so popular last year that the program, they expended the money pretty quickly. But this time it is going to be $25 million in this program, 40,000 dollar grants, you can tell it's not going to be that many people who are going to get it. So it is on the Cal HFA website. The rules are essentially going to be the same as the last round of ADU grants, but essentially it's to help you with the startup costs, the architecture, construction, pre-construction, all of those. So that is good news. Then the other ADU bill that was mentioned was AB 1033, where you can now sell your ADU, kind of like a condo. And you kind of think about who's going to participate in that, right? You own a house. Are you going to sell your condo, your ADU condo in your backyard to strangers? Probably not, right? Because it's like kind of a close contact. So it's probably going to be great for family members, especially seniors who have paid off their mortgage. They're living in their house, but they just can't afford to sell their property because of perhaps tax issues, property tax increases. So this is going to be a great way for folks to do that. Essentially, cities have to opt in. So depending on where you live and how supportive they are of ADUs and creating more affordable housing, everywhere in the state, we have something called a housing element. So every year, we publish the numbers and we encourage all the cities and counties to meet those numbers. Some don't want to do it, and the governor has sued them. Remember, like Huntington Beach. But most people, don't want to get sued, and so they do try to kind of meet those goals. And so some cities are better, as some of you know. Some are better at allowing affordable housing, workforce housing, ADUs, and some are not. So I would definitely encourage you to get involved with your local government. How many of you know your city council member, your supervisor, right? Those are the people that are going to decide whether they're going to allow you to condoize these ADUs to be sold. You also need to get the permission from your utilities, because like condos, you have to have separate meters, separate bills, separate garbage. So it's very, very similar. And then you have to form a homeowners association to assess dues, essentially to take care of the units. So some of you, I used to live in a condo, and I'm not crazy about homeowners association, but maybe it's only one person, right? Because it's only one ADU, so maybe it's going to be easier than having all the people in the building vote for every every issue that you could face. So again, that is an opt-in, and that is AB 1033, and that will go into effect January 1st of 2024. Okay, Dream for All. Dream for All may not apply to many of you, but it is a program that opened and closed in 2 weeks last year. Essentially, the state of California is going to help first-time home buyers with down payment assistance up to 20% of the cost of the house with no fees upfront. The state makes the money when the homeowner sells the property or refinances the property for the second time. And again, that program was so popular, opened and closed in 2 weeks. It is for low income folks, first time home buyers. However, this next round, it will be open in the spring. This next round will be for first time home buyers whose parents don't own a home. So we all know building equity, right? If you buy a home, it builds equity. And if your parents don't have a home, they're not building equity. It's harder for the kids sometimes if they have high student loan debt. So that is called the Dream for All program, and it's worked really, really well. I also have built first time in the history, our agency built student housing on the Santa Rosa Community College site. We built 326 units up in Santa Rosa. Most developers don't want to get into this business because community college students are transient, right? They don't go for 4 years. They may go for 2 years. They may just come and go as they can. But Governor signed a bill where he is now going to put money into more student housing on UC campuses, CSU campuses, and community college campuses. And my office is going to be overseeing the allocation. We desperately need student housing and faculty housing around our universities. They are very popular. They are exceeding expectations. Everybody wants to go, but housing is an issue. And I know it's very frustrating for some, you get accepted, but then you don't know if you're going to have a place to live. And if you don't have a place to live, then the parents are like, what am I going to do? I have to go rent a place for them. So any of you are thinking about building housing, build them around the college sites. Okay, I'm just giving you a tip because we desperately need that. I also oversee the bonds and the tax credits for affordable housing. A lot of people tell me, oh, the governor in California, they want so much money into affordable housing and help homeless people and create wraparound services. How do I do it? I always say, how patient are you? People that get into affordable housing, you essentially need to be in the business for 55 years. That is the covenant that you sign if you're an affordable housing developer. So it is not easy because you have to apply. It is super competitive. And again, you have to work with cities and counties and sometimes the NIMBYs, right? And others, because to put together the affordable housing package, financing package, it is like a jigsaw puzzle. And you don't know where to start. Usually you start with the corners, right? You start with the 4 corners, and then you have to build the puzzle inside. That's how affordable housing is, because you need to go subsidize, right? The units. And in order to subsidize, someone has to pay for it, right? Through tax credits, through financing, through state, federal, local funding sources. So it is not easy, but I'm more than happy to talk to anyone who is interested in getting into affordable housing. Let's see. A lot of people always ask me about charging stations, electric vehicles, electric vehicle charging stations. The governor has set an executive order to have all new vehicles all electric by 2035. I don't know if it's possible, but he has set that goal. But that means California is leading in terms of electric vehicles and charging stations. And people always say, well, what are the incentives? It is not easy to find. So my office has finally put together a spreadsheet of resources. It's not on the sheet. If you're interested, I can email you that. And then the second question I have people say is solar. I want to put solar on my house. I want to put it, on my business. Where do I go? That's another very hard thing to assess. And so I have a resource guide if you're interested in solar. But if you want to retrofit your home to save money, we have a great program called Go Green Financing. GoGreenFinancing.com. It is for residential, for commercial, and for multi-unit buildings. So it is low cost in terms of interest. You can pay it back in a longer period of time, but if you want to retrofit your house, your windows, your HVAC, your lights, Go Green Financing is a really good program. It is on my website. There are participating lenders. Then you go out and get 3 bids, you put the bid, and then you can get the loan. So many people have used it and it's very successful. Also, some of you have small businesses, right? Small business. If you have 1 or more employee and you don't offer a pension plan to your employees, you will have to sign them up with my program called Cal Savers. So you may hear about it and some people go, oh, I need to start, a pension plan. No, you don't. This is the beauty. You don't need to, because having a pension plan for your employees usually costs a lot of money. There's a lot of compliance, and then there's a lot of record keeping. So CalSavers, once you upload your employee roster to us, we manage it for you. It is like a Roth IRA. The plan, their account stays with the employee. Even if they quit, they're fired, they move, you have no legal liability. So this is a really amazing program, and people get confused. They think, oh, I gotta start one, otherwise the state's going to penalize me. Completely the opposite, and it's really a game changer for small businesses. So if you're interested in knowing more about that, please let me know. Any small business owners, we have something called the Small Business Development Centers all across California. They are paid for by the state and the federal government. So these are free resources for you. So if you have questions about anything I've talked about, your Small Business Development Center should be able to help you. They have experts. They can help you with marketing, with budgets, with linking you to SBA loans or any of our loan programs. So please take advantage of that. And let's see what else before I turn it over to questions. Also, veterans. Some of you are realtors. We have a lot of money for veterans under our CalVet program. And they don't like to really publicize it because they say, well, we're going to be too busy. And I go, okay, then I'll publicize it because I issue the loans for the CalVet program. So these loans are for any veteran for home ownership. They don't take FICO scores into consideration. It is really their ability to pay. Unlike for everyone else that's trying to get a traditional loan, you need to have W-2s, you need to have consistent, funding streams. But for veterans, it is an amazing program, not only for first-time home buyers, but for veterans. So that is also an area that you may want to explore a little bit more as people come back from the military. They are always looking for houses. And I think that's all I was really going to cover. And I'm just open for any questions that you may have. You know what? I was reading about it. Does anybody know? I mean, I think it has to be detached because you can't separate. Well, I mean, you can't separate everything. You have to allocate, right? But you have to have separate meters. I mean, I guess it could be done, but it's probably not ideal.
Are there any extensions proposed for ministerial approval of infill housing, say, within half a mile of a transit stop? So much like what City of Sacramento passed, and I think it was not even 2 years ago, that if you're in a certain area and in certain important units, then you get some ministerial approval. So has that been taken up by the governor's office at making that applicable across the state?
Yeah, so that is transit-oriented development. Scott Wiener has been kind of the leader in terms of trying to create more units, housing around real transit stations like the BARTs. The only time we take that into consideration is for affordable housing. Since it is competitive, we give them extra points for being closer to housing, closer to transportation. But that is something that everybody's always bringing up, but as you know, if you're in this world, it's not always easy to pass, right?
Is there any new legislation allowing ADUs to get credit for affordable housing credits for development? Right now, there isn't.
No, not in the affordable space, but certain jurisdictions like San Diego, they're giving density bonuses for ADUs. And so they are allowing ADUs to be built on top of parking lots. Yes, yeah. Because obviously, sometimes you have to build parking along with units. And so they figured out a way to keep the parking, and then they build like 2 stories on top, and then they give them density bonuses. So we should be doing that, I think.
Yeah, the only one who confirms that if there's policy and discussion, I think we could increase the build of ADUs for affordable units. If home builders could get credit from it too.
Yeah.
You know, because right now they're chasing, allocating affordable housing and not, you know, make profit on those. But if we encourage ADUs to also qualify for affordable credit.
So part of the problem is the bonds that,
Fiona, would you repeat?
Oh, okay,
the question?
yeah.
We need it.
okay, so his question is the state thinking about giving any incentives for ADUs for affordable housing? So at the state, we get an allocation from the federal government for bonds. And we get this allocation based on the number of people that we have. So I'm just gonna divert for a minute about the census and how important the census is every year. Remember, people used to come knock on your door and say, how many people live in your house, right? And then, you know, a lot of us don't want to answer the door. So we look, we're like, no, we're not going to answer. But during COVID, California received $28 billion. And that was based on the number of people we report in our census. That's why it is so important that we answer that question. So the bonds, we only get $4.2 billion worth of bonds. And they are competitive. They have to be matched with state low-income housing tax credits. So we essentially run out of tax credits and bonds, you know, before the end of the year. We have been asking the governor has been very generous in giving us $500 million in state low-income housing tax credits. But again, it matches the bonds. So until we either get more allocation or we get more state tax credits, or we can lower the requirement, the basis from 50 to 25% in terms of the bonds used, then we can do something to incentivize and give tax credits or bonds for ADUs. So that's kind of the difficulty. Yeah.
So I've been immigrant in California for the last 45 years and I love living here. I also have few real estate partners that want to be here too, which are our pay. When I tell them I live in California, I do business here, would you like to join? The answer is simple, no. California is too complex to do business. So my question to you is as to which in the whole government system, which department decides that we are going to make it more friendly to business or unfriendly to business or we are ahead?
Yes, so California does assess a little extra sunshine or weather tax, right? Depending on how you like it. Anyway, I find that it depends on who is leading the agency. So I came from the private sector and I'm an accountant. So I know that time is money. So I chair all of my housing tax credit and bond meetings because sometimes you get stuck. There's exceptions. We didn't know about COVID. We didn't know about the floods and the fires and then the rising interest rates. And someone needs to make those decisions to extend, give supplementals, you know, because people can't necessarily meet the deadline. And if you have someone that's by the book, they'll say, I'm sorry, no, we are not going to extend. But because this is my area, we have been very, very flexible to allow for the changing conditions. So there's not one agency, it's really who is running it and what their policies are.
So all these SB 9 and 35, all these bills are passed, but you're not enforcing or the cities are not adapting to why there is a requirement or opt-in for the city. Like, why can't they enforce these things, right? Like the cities are not acting upon these things. Like, literally, these laws are passed, but nobody is using.
Yeah. Okay, so there's something called local control, where the locals don't want the state or the federal government to tell them what to do, right? Scott Wiener has proposed a number of bills because some cities don't want to comply. It's harder, right? There's CEQA, they sue, they threaten, you know, elected officials that they're going to recall them if they vote for, you know, a certain, you know, project. So that creates problems, and that's why Scott Wiener, he takes the stand that the state is going to mandate and have blanket allowances and not give the cities any sort of choice because of all the difficulties. So when we try to pass a bill that supersedes local control, then there are local government agencies, associations that come out and they basically try to kill the bills and bully us not to do that, right? So
That's good.
exactly. So I served on the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, and we appreciate that we have certain laws, right, that we pass or we don't like. So when I was at that level, I was obviously supporting local control. Then you go to the state, right, Canton, and you're like, okay, if the locals can't get it done, then we're gonna tell them how to get it done. But they are huge, huge fights in Sacramento. So that's why the laws are the way they are. Opt in, because if you say mandate, then it may not get to the governor's desk, and then the governor may not sign it. But if you say opt in, then usually local governments are like, okay, fine.
But it's very unlike corporate or private world. And generally coming from there, generally if instruction is top down, it goes through and nobody challenges it. But in government, it's just different. There is a lack of alignment.
It's different because in the private sector, if people don't do what they're supposed to do, bye-bye. In government, it is very hard to say bye-bye to people. Plus, government workers, okay, people always say, how come government isn't like the private sector? Well, when the private sector is doing well, right, they're paying bonuses and options and everyone's getting rich. And then when things don't go so well, they fire everybody. So then they have no pensions, they have no health care, they're living on the street potentially, and government has to pick up the slack. So government really is about the safety net, right? So what do we give in exchange for the bonuses and the stock options? Well, if we work 20 years in government, then we get a pension and we can get free healthcare for life. Okay. I am the treasurer of the fourth largest economy. I make $170,000. Take away 40% of taxes, which I am very happy to pay. We just went to Roth today, you know, everything is really inexpensive that I wear, okay? These earrings were $12.99. But that's what we kind of give up, right? As a state employee. So state employees, they want to stay at least 10 years, but 20 years is preferable. So it doesn't matter whether we get something done today or in 2 years. Time is still going, right? And that's the problem. All of my directors, I have 16 directors, they all have private sector experience. That to me is very important because the pressures you have as a developer, you know, the bankers, the tax credit investors, they're not going to wait. And then next time, they're just not going to invest. And so for me, I have to make sure I'm moving all of my projects efficiently, effectively, so that, so that we can move forward and I can finance all the projects. So that's kind of the mentality, of government workers. So people always say, well, how come, government doesn't invest in IT, like the best IT that tech has to offer? Well, if you make the wrong decision, and you have cost overruns, well, you're going to get fired. And so they want to be very careful, do their due diligence, to get an RFP on the street, sometimes taking a year or 2 years. And then for the tech industry, I say, you should be happy that government is like this. Because by the time we regulate tech, you're on your 5th iteration. Okay, you guys are like, okay, go chase that little, shiny thing over there. We're like onto, AI now. And people are like, oh, what is AI? By the time we figure it out, it's like you're onto something else. So, tech and government, I always say, I wish tech would work more closely with elected officials. Tech people say, we don't want to work with you, just stay out of our way. But then when we propose a bill to regulate tech, then everybody goes crazy. It costs a lot more money because you have to fight the initiative process. I want to talk about the initiative process too for a minute, right? California is one of the most liberal states in terms of putting an initiative on the statewide ballot. You either need 2/3 of the legislature plus the governor's signature, or if you have a couple $1 million, you can gather signatures. So the people that are outside Safeway and, the BART station that's asking, are you a registered voter? Would you, sign to put this proposition on the ballot? So the problem with the state initiatives is it does not go through any sort of review process. No checks and balances, no due diligence. Nobody sets a price tag to it, but it always costs much more money. And when the voters vote for these initiatives and we pass it, then that means we are going to take more authority away from the legislators in terms of budgets. So during the Great Recession, people said, how come we're spending more on jails than we are on other programs? I said, did you vote for 3 strikes? Did you vote for Haley's Law, Megan's Law, Chelsea's Law, human trafficking, right? We all do because we want to feel safe in our homes and in our work. But every time you vote for one of those laws, it means you're telling the state of California they need to fund jails, the people in prisons, right? So we had a prison overcrowding crisis during Jerry Brown. So Jerry Brown, changed a lot of the laws. A lot of folks were, released on good recognizance and stuff like that because we just couldn't sustain it. It was really bleeding us at the state. And plus, we had a federal trustee that said that we have to do something, that the care that prisoners were getting in the system was not, humane. People were living like in their, not the kitchen, but the community spaces. They had bunk beds in there because they had so many people in jail. So I would just say, when there's a statewide ballot initiative, if you are not really sure, vote no. But it is going to cost money. I don't know who's recording this. Okay, we're going to
Glad you mentioned pensions, and that's a good segue to how there much discussion within coppers and CalSTRS about additional allocations to ETIs or economic target investments that help us support greater workforce housing production, especially. So has that been in discussion? Because that can very much, if you align it with the efforts to redevelop underused land around transit, so especially around BART or LA Metro or any of that, it could really do quite a bit in terms of putting, well, not just pensions, but the entire state on a much better fiscal footing. So has there been much discussion within these pension funds about ETIs or all that?
So the question is, the pension system, CalPERS and CalSTRS, UC has a pretty good endowment or investment portfolio. Have they talked about putting more money into affordable housing? And I will have to tell you no, because we need to make about a 7% rate of return every year. And real estate takes a long time, especially affordable housing, to finance and to build. And then also we have to generate the returns. And so affordable housing does not really generate the returns. And I found that the systems don't like to sell property. And so they keep it on the books. So the pension systems really are looking at private equity. Because private equity investment traditionally is a lot higher, 9, 14, 20%. And so we try to diversify our investments. We have some equity, public equity, some bonds, a little real estate, and then mostly private equity is what gets us over the 7%.
Yeah, so not you have the affordable, like more like the workforce and the
yes,
because at the very least it would still help because you can have remote filtering that if you don't have the musical chairs issue with housing, then Those who could afford to do housing, they'll vacate units that we can pass down to those with lower incomes. So
Yeah, so, on CalSTRS, we manage the fund for teachers, current teachers, retirees. And I brought that up and I said, well, why aren't we investing and building more housing for our retired teachers? Teachers don't make a lot of money. Okay, their pensions are not a lot. Social Security had not been raised in 50 years. And so these teachers are struggling as they retire. So why aren't we investing more so that they can afford to live? That is my idea, right? UC Regents now has decided to divest a lot of their real estate holdings and only invest in housing that helps their UC campuses. So they're targeted, right? We don't want to have, places in Moscow and other places. So we're trying to bring it home. CalPERS also sold a bunch of assets recently because they weren't making money during COVID. So not easy though.
Before we close the Q&A section, I want to thank AlphaX for inviting Fiona here to share such a wealth of knowledge to all of us. And special thanks for you to take time out of your busy schedule to be with us. I'm very, very happy that I learned that you're going to run for the governor in 2026.
You should get run for lieutenant governor in 2026.
Oh, okay, the retirement the governor, lieutenant governor. I'm sorry. Well, but in 8 years you will be running for the governor.
Like I said, Ross.
I want to thank you and congratulate you with that decision. Thank you.
It's not easy because I have done my 20 years, so I can retire and I can have health care for life, but this is my calling. I love what I do. I love to be a resource. I want to, I love California. I want to see it grow. I want to, make sure that folks like us who came here for the American dream can actually achieve it. So just thank everybody for all you do to make this state a golden state.
Thank you, Fiona. I believe that we can become Ross sisters.
Exactly, right?
And it's really dear and near to me that Fiona Ma, even though her office is running or processing transactions over $3 billion. Oh, 3 trillion, sorry. Excuse my math. I have never seen that many money before. But then she's still talking about, Dream for All program, funding that can help homeowners, first-time homeowners, as little as $40,000 that can change, that can change a person's life. So it's really a contrast, but then it's really dear and near that you're very down to earth and have been helping all of us so far. Thank you so much, and a round of applause again. Thank you. And then also, congratulations for coming. Anything related to San Jose matters, go to him. He's a great resource also in San Jose. And then I believe that Stephen Ma also wanted to say a few words and share some of his thoughts, right? For those of you who don't know Stephen, he's a great leader in the education sector, and I believe you guys are also related, right?
No.
Doesn't matter.
No.
Yeah, it's good to say no first. Anyways, round of applause for Stephen.
Fiona Ma, now I serve as Fiona Ma, Lieutenant Governor and her Finance Chair. And I just want to say a few words. Number one, thank you, Stephanie E, for inviting us, AlphaX. When is the last time you got so close with a constitutional office like Treasurer, right?
Yeah.
Never, right? This is the fourth largest economy, for Christ's sake, in the world. We beat, US, if we were our own country, with the US, then there's China, Japan, then there's us. Right, and she's very humble. She has hold record, she won the highest vote when she ran for treasurer in the entire history of California. Whoa. I want to say a few words for her because she's very humble, and I think this is important to us constitutionally. Number one, she's, as you have seen, right, very humble, very down to earth. Usually people of her caliber, they don't go to small meeting like this. They go to, schmooze with Microsoft CEO or Google people, right? But Fiona always have a heart of a commoner, and she care about issues that we care about. That's why she goes to Ross. So, right. So, and number two, that gentleman said really well. What do we do with with this government that's with so much bureaucratic red tape? It's putting people who knows how to think and act like business owners. And Fiona is probably the most pro-developer politician that you can see. So, and since if it's a state level, you want to elect people like her to state office. If it's city level, you want to elect people like Henson into your office, right? Then it's really laws are law, but how do you interpret it? I mean, the same set of law, I can act progressively, proactively, or I can react reactively, right? It's all depending on who's in charge, who's behind the wheel. So it's important for her to be in the office. She's running for lieutenant governor, but she's young, right? And gubernatorial race, governor in the future is definitely within grasp.
Yeah.
But we need your support. In fact, she doesn't smooth with Elon Musk. She doesn't smooth. She doesn't rub elbow with Bill Gates. So she election comes to is really about it's about money. So we need your support. I'm here, and I brought with us Lawrence G. He's also on the finance committee, and Yasmin, he's also on the finance committee. If you want to help, please contact us, and we're gonna give you our cards. You can go online. $50, $100, $500. We can only take 18,200. So and if you have if you involved with people with different private business experience, if you want her to speak to your office, to your crowd, to your people, your community, please reach out. She hardly says no to things. Her schedule, you can probably ask her CHP, right? She has 6 to 8 items events a day on average. She doesn't take a day off. So anyway, I just want to say thank you, Fiona, for helping California, and thank you all. And let's support Fiona to be in office, the gubernatorial office. All right?
Yes.
Lieutenant Governor. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I was shocked to be 1% met Fiona Ma. So thanks to Lizzie and Kenson to introduce to. And when I met Fiona Ma, I felt like so surprised. And I was not interested, to predict the new one, like for to get so close. But when I met her, I felt like she can really listen to you. She will listen to you, and also she's so down to earth. And also, I think like she knows so many details about how we're doing as real estate developers, what we need. And so, like when you met, hey, we have this motor mixer, we probably only have 40 to 100 people. So would you like to come in to talk? She said, yeah, sure. I was like that, surprised, So I feel like, as we are doing real estate, so if we would like to do something to really try to achieve to get more affordable housing, workforce housing, I really think that needed for workforce housing. So when she mentioned workforce housing, I realized there's difference. So Santa Clara County is $187 for like median income, right? So under $187 is kind of median income. That's really high. Yeah, you see, I think there are $187 in Santa Clara County. I was shocked when I started like the median income. I feel like a lot of people cannot buy houses, right? And it's so high expensive that all this law with ADUs, with all this can really help people. So that's why we support people we really like, and the people can really make our society better. That's Panama. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So I think at this moment, we can open up the floor for everyone to just do a kind mixer, and then we also have some
Like snacks and drinks for you to enjoy. And thank you all for coming again. This is the purpose of us doing monthly Google mixers to gather and unite and strengthen this community together. Thank you all. Thank you.